From the fabric-covered biplanes that carved through the skies of China to the desperate rocket-powered interceptors designed to ram B-29s, this is the aerial arsenal of the Empire of Japan. For years, the West underestimated Japanese aviation, dismissing their designs as mere copies. They were wrong. This catalog reveals a fleet defined by incredible range, terrifying agility, and a philosophy that prioritized attack over survival. We will cover the Imperial Japanese Navy's carrier legends, the Army's rugged interceptors, the behemoth flying boats, and the experimental jets that arrived too late to change the tide. This is the complete catalog of every major Japanese military aircraft used in World War II. Let's begin. Army fighters, the Eagles of the Emperor.
Kawasaki, Kiten.
The Perry, the last samurai of the biplane era. Entering service in the mid-1930s, this was the pinnacle of Japanese biplane design, boasting incredible maneuverability that pilots adored. While obsolete by Pearl Harbor, it saw action in the Second Sino-Japanese War and served as a trainer and patrol craft throughout the conflict. It represents the old guard before the monoplane revolution. Nakajima Ki-27. The Nape, the Acrobat. This fixed undercarriage fighter was the Imperial Japanese Army's first true monoplane dogfighter. It was hyper-maneuverable, capable of turning inside almost anything in the sky, a trait that defined Japanese design philosophy for years. However, its light armament and lack of armor made it a death trap against modern Allied fighters later in the war. Nakajima Ki-43 Hayabusa, the Oscar, the Peregrine Falcon, the Army's answer to the Zero and the workhorse of the land-based Air Force. More Oscars were produced than any other Army fighter. It was legendary for its agility, often dancing around P-40s and Wildcats, but it suffered from the fatal Japanese flaw, a lack of self-sealing fuel tanks. It was a sniper's weapon, deadly in skilled hands but fragile as glass. Nakajima Ki-44 Shoki, the Tojo, the Demon. Breaking away from the turnfighter tradition, the Tojo was built for pure speed and climb rate. Designed as an interceptor to catch high-flying bombers, it traded maneuverability for heavy cannons and a powerful engine. Pilots initially hated its high landing speed, but as Allied bombers began pounding the homeland, the Tojo became a critical line of defense. Kawasaki Ki-61 Hien, the Tony, the Swallow, a unique anomaly in the Japanese inventory. While nearly every other fighter used radial engines, the Tony used a liquid-cooled inline engine, leading Allied pilots to initially mistake it for a German Bf-109. It was fast, well-armored, and dived effectively, but it was plagued by constant engine reliability issues that kept many grounded. Nakajima Ki-84 He-8, the Frank, the Gale, widely considered the best Japanese fighter of the war. It combined the maneuverability of the Oscar with the speed and armor of Western fighters. Capable of outrunning a P-51 Mustang at certain altitudes and carrying heavy firepower, it was a terrifying adversary in 1944. Its only enemy was poor fuel quality and late-war manufacturing defects. Kawasaki Ki-100, the Last Stand, the Improvisation. When the factory-producing engines for the Ki-61 was destroyed by B-29s, engineers desperately fitted radial engines onto the Ki-61 airframes. The result was accidental brilliance. The Ki-100 was reliable, agile, and deadly, quickly becoming one of the few aircraft capable of going toe-to-toe with the Hellcat and Corsair in the final months of the war. Navy fighters, Guardians of the Pacific, Mitsubishi A-5M, the Claude, the Pioneer. This was the world's first carrier-based monoplane fighter. With its open cockpit and fixed landing gear, it looked primitive, but it secured air superiority over China and trained the generation of aces that would strike Pearl Harbor. It proved that carrier aircraft didn't have to be inferior to land-based ones. Mitsubishi A6M0, the Legend, the Ryzen, the most iconic aircraft of the Pacific War. In 1941, it was the finest carrier fighter in the world, possessing a range and turn rate that defied the laws of physics. It allowed Japan to project power across half the globe, but its lack of armor and refusal to evolve meant that by 1943, it had turned from a predator into prey. It fought from the first day of the war to the last. Mitsubishi J2M Raiden, the Jack, the Thunderbolt. Designed strictly as a land-based interceptor for the Navy, this aircraft abandoned the dogfight to focus on climbing speed. Its mission was simple: get up fast and destroy incoming B-29s with its 420mm cannons. Short and stubby, it was difficult to fly but hit like a sledgehammer. Kawanishi N1 KJE Shurden. The George, the Violet Lightning. Born from a floatplane design, this aircraft evolved into arguably the finest land-based fighter the Navy ever possessed. It featured automatic combat flaps that adjusted to G-forces, giving it unmatched turning ability even at high speeds. In the hands of elite units like the 343rd Naval Air Group, the George terrified American pilots over the Philippines and Okinawa. Mitsubishi A7M Repu, the SAM, the Hurricane, the intended successor to the Zero. It was designed to fix everything wrong with its predecessor, adding armor, self-sealing tanks, and massive firepower. However, an earthquake and relentless bombing raids delayed its engine production. Only a handful were built before the surrender, leaving it as one of the great what-ifs of the war. While the fighters battled for air superiority, the true striking power of the Empire lay in its bombers. From the decks of the Kido Butai to the airfields of Rabaul, carrier bombers, the hammer of the fleet, HED-3A, the Val, the Pearl Harbor Spear. This fixed-gear dive bomber dropped the first bombs on American targets in the Pacific. It was slow and obsolete by Western standards, but incredibly precise. In the early war, Val pilots achieved hit rates of over 80%, sinking more Allied warships than any other Axis aircraft. Nakajima B-5N, the Kate, the Torpedo Master, the partner to the Val. This torpedo bomber was the best in the world in 1941, faster and longer-ranged than its American counterpart, the Devastator. It was the Kate that crippled the U.S. battleship fleet at Pearl Harbor and helped sink the carriers Lexington, Yorktown, and Hornet. Yokosuka D-4Y Suisei, the Judy, the Comet. Replacing the Val, this dive bomber was built for speed, powered by a liquid-cooled engine licensed from Germany. It was so fast that it was often used for reconnaissance, outrunning interceptors to bring back photos of the U.S. fleet. However, it lacked armor, earning it a grim reputation for catching fire easily. Nakajima B-6N Tenzin, the Jill, the Heavenly Mountain, the replacement for the Kate. It featured a powerful engine and better defensive armament, designed to punch through the wall of American anti-aircraft fire. By the time it entered service, however, the Japanese carrier fleet had been decimated, forcing the Jill to operate mostly from land bases in suicidal attacks. HEB-7A Ryusei, the Grace, the Shooting Star, a technological marvel intended to replace both the dive bomber and the torpedo bomber with a single airframe. With inverted gull wings and heavy armament, it was as agile as a fighter. It arrived too late to sea carrier service, operating only from land in the final desperate defense of the home islands. Land-based bombers, the long-range strikers, Mitsubishi G-3M, the Nell, the intercontinental threat. Before the war, this bomber stunned the world with its immense range. It was the first aircraft to sink a capital ship at sea while underway, the HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse. It was a dedicated long-range torpedo carrier that decimated Allied shipping in the early months of the conquest. Mitsubishi G-4M, the Betty, the Flying Lighter, the definitive Japanese medium bomber. It had a cigar-shaped fuselage and incredible range, capable of flying missions Allied bombers couldn't dream of. But to achieve this, engineers sacrificed all armor protection. American pilots called it the Type 1 lighter because a single tracer round to the wing tanks would cause it to explode instantly. Mitsubishi Ki-21, the Sally, the heavy lifter, the standard heavy bomber of the Army Air Service. It flew in every theater, from the freezing steppes of Manchuria to the humid jungles of New Guinea. Reliable and easy to maintain, it was the backbone of the Army's bombing campaigns, though it suffered heavy losses against modern interceptors due to weak defensive guns. Nakajima Ki-49 Danryu, the Helen, the Storm Dragon, designed to be a heavy bomber escort, heavily armed and armored to fly without fighter protection. In practice, it was underpowered and couldn't carry a significant bomb load. While it failed in its primary role, it found a niche as a troop transport and maritime patrol aircraft. Mitsubishi Ki-67 Hiryu, the Peggy, the Flying Dragon, perhaps the best Japanese bomber of the war. It was fast, highly maneuverable, capable of looping and turning like a fighter, and heavily armored. It was used effectively as a torpedo bomber and later modified for suicide missions. It was a rare case of Japanese engineering prioritizing crew survival. Yokosuka P-1Y Jinga, the Francis, the Galaxy, a sleek, twin-engine bomber designed for the Navy that rivaled the speed of the Mosquito. It was sophisticated and complex, which made it a nightmare to maintain in the deteriorating conditions of the late war. Despite its high performance, it was often relegated to kamikaze duties as the situation became hopeless. Reconnaissance and flying boats. The eyes of the Empire. Mitsubishi Ki-46, the Dyna, the Untouchable, one of the most elegant aircraft of World War II. This reconnaissance plane was so fast and flew so high that for years no Allied fighter could catch it. It roamed freely over Australia and India, gathering intelligence with impunity until the arrival of the P-38 Lightning. Nakajima C-6 Ensign, the Mert, the Painted Cloud, the Navy's carrier-based recon speedster. It was the first carrier plane to feature laminar flow wings for reduced drag. It is famous for sending the final message, "No Grumman's in sight," just moments before the Marianas Turkey shoot, highlighting its ability to outrun the Hellcat. Kawanishi H-6K, the Mavis, the Big Bird, a massive four-engine flying boat used for long-range maritime patrol. It had incredible endurance, capable of 24-hour patrols. While vulnerable to fighters, it was crucial for maintaining the logistics lines across the vast Pacific Ocean in the early war. Kawanishi H-8K, the Emily, the Porcupine, widely considered the best flying boat of World War II, surpassing even the British Sunderland. It was heavily armed with 20mm cannons, bristling with defensive fire, and incredibly rugged. It was faster than many fighters and could fly missions from the Marshall Islands to bomb Hawaii. It was a true dreadnought of the sky. Mitsubishi F-1M, the Pete, the Biplane Observer, a humble observation float plane launched from battleships and cruisers. Despite being a biplane, it was surprisingly agile and was occasionally used as an improvised fighter, famously shooting down modern monoplanes on rare occasions. It was the omnipresent eyes of the surface fleet. Armies run on logistics and pilots need training. We cannot ignore the aircraft that built the foundation for the frontline fighters. Transports and trainers. The silent backbone. Showa/Nakajima L2D. The Tabby, the DC-3 clone. Japan held a license to build the Douglas DC-3 before the war. The result was the Tabby. To the untrained eye, it is identical to the American C-47 Skitran. It was the logistical workhorse of the Navy, hauling cargo and paratroopers across the Empire's vast distances. Mitsubishi Ki-57, the Topsy, the civil servant. Developed from the Ki-21 bomber, this transport retained the bomber's wings and tail but featured a new fuselage for passengers. It was faster than the Tabby and served as the primary staff transport for high-ranking Army officers and paratrooper drops. Kakusai Ki-59, the Teresa, the bush plane, a light transport with a high wing and fixed gear. It was crude and underpowered, struggling in the rough terrain of the frontier. It was quickly replaced but served briefly as a glider tug and light utility craft. Yokosuka K-5Y, the Willow, the Red Dragonfly, the primary intermediate trainer for the Navy. Almost every Japanese naval aviator, from the aces of Midway to the kamikaze pilots of Okinawa, learned their trade in this orange-painted biplane. It was stable, forgiving, and undoubtedly the most important aircraft for pilot generation. Kakusai Ku-8, the Gander, the silent troop carrier, the Army's only operational military glider, could carry 20 troops or a light vehicle. While Japan never conducted massive glider invasions like D-Day, these were used to shuttle supplies to remote garrisons in the Philippines and China. Special attack and prototypes. The Desperate Ends. Yokosuka MXY-7 Ohka, the Baka, the Cherry Blossom, a human-guided rocket missile. Dropped from the belly of a Betty bomber, the pilot would ignite 3 solid-fuel rockets and dive into an Allied ship at 600 miles per hour. Allied sailors called it the Baka Idiot Bomb. It was a weapon of pure desperation, terrifying in concept but largely ineffective in practice due to the vulnerability of the motherships. Nakajima Kika, the Orange Blossom, the Jet Pioneer, Japan's first jet aircraft, heavily inspired by the German Me-262, Unlike the German fighter, the Kikka was smaller and designed for rudimentary manufacturing. It flew only once, days before the surrender. It stands as a testament to Japanese engineering attempting to leap a generation of technology while their cities burned. Mitsubishi J-8M Shusui, the Swordstroke, the Rocket Interceptor, a license-built copy of the German Me-163 Comet. It was a tailless flying wing powered by a volatile rocket mixture. Designed to rocket up to 30,000 feet in minutes to ram B-29s, it barely made it to the testing phase. The first test flight ended in a crash, killing the pilot, symbolizing the chaotic end of the war. Kyushu J-7W Shinden, the Magnificent Lightning, the Pusher, one of the most visually striking designs of the century. A canard wing interceptor with the propeller at the back. It was built to mount a jet engine eventually. It flew only 3 times. With its futuristic swept wings, it looks like something from a sci-fi movie, not 1945. Nakajima Ki-115 Tsurugi, the expendable, the simple sword. As resources vanished, the army requested a plane that could be built by semi-skilled labor using wood and spare metal. The Tsurugi was a suicide plane, pure and simple. It had crude controls, a landing gear that dropped off after takeoff, since it wouldn't be returning, and just enough fuel for a one-way trip. Fortunately, the war ended before it saw combat. From the agile acrobats of the early war to the tragic, rocket-powered suicide machines of the final days, the Japanese air fleet represents a unique arc in military history. It is a story of a nation that started with world-class engineering focused on range and attack, only to be crushed by the industrial might and technological adaptability of its enemies. They built planes that could dance like leaves in the wind, but ultimately, they could not weather the storm. Which of these unique designs captures your imagination? Is it the legendary Zero, or perhaps the futuristic Shinden? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.